All right, thank you everyone for coming down. My name is, if you don't know, Mark Sauter. I'm the association president here. Want to thank our association vice president, Laura Lebo. She's working in the shack tonight. If anyone is hungry for hot dogs, cheeseburgers, there's drinks in there as well. So she'll be there for probably the next hour. So grab some dinner if you're hungry. So the association this year is its 95th year. So welcome down to the Marymount Beach. Happy to host the candidates night again. Trying to put something together in a couple of weeks also for the city council at large candidates and school committee candidates. So stay tuned for that. But tonight we have our 3 Ward 1 candidates. We have Dave McCarthy, who's the current city councilor, and 2 challengers, Danielle Kemp and Joe Murphy. So thank you to the candidates for running. You know, it takes a lot of time and energy, and it's a sacrifice, you know, on the families. So thank you to the candidates. Thank you to the candidates' families for putting it all out there, for trying to improve our city and keep our ward in good shape. So a little bit about the setup here. Each candidate has a 15-minute window where they'll be on the microphone. We'd encourage the candidates to be about 8 to 10 minutes where they can give an introduction of who they are, what their issues, what their plans, what their ideas, and then they'll turn the microphone back to me and I'll try to throw a couple questions to them for the last 5 minutes. So that's how we're going to do it tonight, and we will get started with our first candidate, Danielle Kemp.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for having me. Couldn't have picked a better day weather-wise. This is just beautiful. Thank you again, Marymount Association, for hosting this night. It's so needed to get the word out about local issues. I'm Danielle Kemp, and I am running for Ward 1 City Council. I like to say I'm Quincy by choice. I moved here about 10 years ago. I had a job in the nonprofit fundraising sector in Quincy, and I was trying to figure out with my husband where we're going to settle down and have a family. And Quincy was perfect. It was close to public transportation. It had that community feel, even in this ward. Oh my goodness, Marymount's amazing, House Neck's amazing, Germantown's amazing, all a different, wonderful community, family-friendly feeling. And I love that I put down my roots here. I mentioned I have a husband here. I have a 1.5-year-old daughter, Elise, in the back, who is being very good. Thank you, honey. And I'm proud to be from here. And as I've been in the community, I decided I really wanted to be committed to making this Quincy a better place. So I got on the board of the Friends of the Thomas Crane Public Library. They are the ones that fund all the wonderful programs, and they also pay for the museum passes. So me and my daughter pretty much live over there. And I also got on the board of Access, which is a nonprofit trying to create accessibility all over the South Shore for those that are disabled, but it benefits us all. So on that accessibility, I worked with current at-large councilor Ann Mahoney to get the Commission on Disabilities reestablished, and I'm very proud of that work. I hope that when it is up and running that I'll be a member of that as well. Accessibility is what brought me into this race. I have friends and family who are disabled, but honestly, you don't have to look further than your front door to see problems in the city for people to get around. The broken raised sidewalks that I like to joke create a ramp for somebody in a wheelchair that wants to pop a wheelie, or, you know, sometimes just at community events to not have captioning, deaf and people who just can't hear in the ambiance of the evening cannot participate in what is rightly theirs to participate in. I want this to be a welcoming city for all. So in 2004, Quincy was sued for non-compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is a federal law. 15 years later, we are still not in compliance. And I would be the voice fighting for that. There are simple things we could change tomorrow to bring us so much closer. And everyone should be a part of this community, no matter what, whether they're disabled or not. Moms pushing strollers benefit it, and even people who just don't want to trip on a broken sidewalk. And that's most of us. Another big thing I've been hearing as I've been knocking doors since April is all about the development. How it seems to everyone that the condos are going up anywhere and everywhere, seemingly single-family houses knocked down, and now there's another luxury condominium complex. They're almost always priced at luxury pricing. At $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, who are they building these for? It makes it lose the community feel, and now everyone is dealing with the fact that now their side streets are cut through as people are trying to get around the traffic that it causes. And the neighbors all speak up. Everyone goes to community meetings. They all say they don't want it, and it seems to go nowhere. If elected, I will be your voice on the city council and show up at zoning boards to say, this is not what people want. We were promised affordable housing. It's not coming. Developers are paying into affordable housing funds, that most of which is just staying in the bank unspent. I want true affordable housing in Quincy, because that is the second biggest issue I hear when I'm knocking doors. We have young people who can't move into the city, stop renting because it's just too expensive. And we have older people that have told me they're leaving the state because they're getting priced out from their property taxes. On paper, your property tax rate has gone down, but with all of our assessments climbing, which is usually a great thing, in reality, all our rates go up. I'm in favor of the proposed resident-occupied abatements to help current homeowners stay in their houses, and I would love to expand the senior abatement that's already out there. I think the income level that it's set at might be a little unrealistic for what seniors are actually making, and we want it to be a practical thing. I also believe we are developing far too quickly. And I believe in the concept of controlled growth and transparency on what we're doing. So I would have numerous community meetings, not just the first one with the developer where they propose the plans and then you hope to hear what's happening a few months later, and before you can say anything, it's up. I hate that type of process. And there's a condo proposed right across the street from me, another 6 floors. I've had one of those meetings. I've been to other meetings like that in Quincy Point, and that just is so frustrating. So I want to be the voice speaking for you. Sorry. Another huge issue, the MBTA and how unreliable it is. I am proud to have stand with many, many councilors, including Michelle Wu, on July 1st when the hikes went up, the rates of the T. I was protesting the unfair hikes then, and I continue to work with the T today to try to get some reasonable reliability. Because when it's not reliable, you can't count on it. What happens is the T says we all self-divert, which means now there's even more traffic crawling up the street, and no one is happy, be it you sitting on the T that is not moving for 30 minutes, or you sitting in traffic and you still can't get to work on time. Not many people have jobs that are that understanding that you can be late many, many times a day when you leave the same time throughout the week. There are some that have professional jobs that can, but that's the vast minority of us. And all of us want to know when the heck the T is coming. We have 4 stops here and a commuter rail. It's a jewel that attracted so many people to this city, and we have MBTA staffers come and speak to the council. They treat it like we should just be so happy they're investing in us. And we are happy they've done some improvements in the city. But if the T is not reliable, all the improvements in the world aren't going to matter. So I would try to hold the T accountable. I also already do work with them on accessibility issues. They often will make an audio announcement that the T has been delayed, but don't do a visual. I want to make sure that is not in compliance with the ADA. And there are people who, you've heard the T audio, even if you have good hearing. It is, what the heck did they just say? So I want it to be communicated. I am also opposed to the Weymouth compressor station. Even though it's in Weymouth, its impact would hit the Point, would also hit Germantown, which are both already designated as environmental justice areas, which means they are already polluted enough that the government says we should not have more pollution. So this compressor station just brings us all of the risk with no reward to anyone around here. Quincy should not stand for it. Massachusetts should not stand for it. I was very happy when I attended the city council meeting on Tuesday night. It has been voted to give money to our city lawyer to help fight the compressor station along with the cities around us, and I fully support that. I also believe we should have cleaner parks in neighborhoods. This is a wonderful jewel here, but unfortunately most city parks are not like that. And the reason yours is so well kept is it's private. It's not a city park. We have residents mowing lawns of parks that are far in their elder age and should not be doing it. We have parents picking up trash that they don't want their little kids to touch on the playgrounds. I think that we need to work to have a regular trash pickup schedule and maintenance schedule so people feel they can bring their kids to the playground and not have grass that's grown up to here and you lose little kid in that. It's wonderful to have all these green spaces in the city, and I think they can be improved. Finally, communication is key to this ward. Our previous city councilor, Margaret LaForest, was awesome. She had a newsletter that went out about every month informing people about what's going on. I would do that. I would also be available. I would give out my phone number, call, text, heck, get me on Nextdoor or Facebook. I don't care how you reach me. I will respond. And I promise I will respond in a timely manner. I may not always get the resolution you want, but I know how it feels to feel like you're ignored, and I don't ever want to do that to someone. I promise I'll get back to you right away and let you know what can be done or where the process is for whatever your issues are. Also, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming here. This is so huge. You're outdoor knocking all the time and you give your speech. I've hit about 3,000 doors in Quincy. To see everyone gathered here today, that they genuinely care about the direction their city is going in, is just so amazing a feeling. So thank you for staying involved. And I respectfully ask for your vote on September 10th. That is next Tuesday. But please, just get informed about the city. If you have any questions on what's going on, I've been attending the city council meetings for long over a year now. I'm often one of the only people in the audience. I know people are watching on QATV too. I feel if you want the job, you should be paying attention to what's going on. So I tend to know what's going on in the city and what can and can't be done. Thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you, Danielle. Just a question here. I'll put this question to you. What's your plan for mitigating traffic issues throughout the ward? Numerous neighborhoods, especially Marymount, we deal with a lot of the cut-through traffic, either in the morning or at night. So if you could talk about some of the traffic issues that I'm sure you hear about from people.
So there's two big issues. First, there's the development that we're just getting more people in Quincy, so that adds to more cars on the road, that there's always going to be traffic. But there's other issues that basically our systems are antiquated. Most of the traffic signals do not talk to each other. And we still have some, believe it or not, that you have to physically go and remove a peg if you want to retime the lights. So I have talked to Chris Cassani, the head of traffic, about that. There are some specific intersections that I worry are very unsafe, like near the library, with what they call a concurrent signal, which means you have the walk when you're walking your stroller, but also people have a green light to turn into you. Makes no sense to me. And I really just want a real plan. We try to piecemeal, okay, now we've got a traffic problem popping up here. Let's put up a speed bump. Let's put up a stop sign. But I haven't seen an overall plan for what the city looks like now. And it has changed a lot in the 10 years, mostly for the better. But we need to have a real plan that takes into account all the traffic lights in the city and figure out where those bottlenecks are. Because I don't just want to solve one problem and then create and cut through on another back dead-end street, or, well, side street that's not necessarily dead-end, because I just don't want to kick the problem down the road. I want a real solution at the end of the day.
Thank you. And let me ask you one more question. Can you explain a vote that Councilor McCarthy has made in the last 2 years that you disagreed with, and something. So, yeah, that's the question.
Sure. So, having Councilor McCarthy here has been wonderful. He really does do a pretty good job when he's voting. There's not much that I disagree with that he's done. I would care a little bit more about accessibility, as I mentioned. When we were talking about reinstating the Commission on Disabilities, and he was asking for an audit of the city, he mistakenly said that the city's already fully compliant. I truly believe that was a mistake on his part. I don't believe he intended to say it that way, but I obviously disagree with that. I also believe the city is developing far too quickly. I would fight more on the zoning board to actually represent the voters and have people have a voice of, can we have another luxury condo across the street from us, and not just say it's in the mayor's plan, that's how he wants it, let's go forward. And that's not anything against the councilor. I understand he's representing his people too, but I am just hearing so much about that development piece, and because I work in the accessibility space, I hear that all the time as well. So those are the two that I really pay attention to.
All right. Well, thank you, Danielle, very much for coming out, for giving us your plan and answering questions. And I assume you'll be over at the table if anyone else has any questions for you.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Next, we have candidate Joe Murphy.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Thank you all for being here. I also want to acknowledge Danielle and Dave. I know how hard it is to run for office, and we do this because we want to help our neighbors and our community, and I appreciate them being here and for their candidacy as well. My name is Joe Murphy, and I thought for the 8 to 10 minutes I have, I would do like a who, what, when, where, why about why I'm running here and who I am. So I thought I'd start with the who. I am the dad to Maddie and Ellie, and the husband to Cheryl, and that's my most important role. And that's a real controversial thing for a politician to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. They're my heart, and they're big part of the reason why I do this. I'm also a member of the Quincy Climate Action Network, because one of the things near my heart is the environment and Quincy's role in the environment. I'm also an active member of the Atherton Howell Parent-Teacher Organization, and that's one of my most fulfilling side projects, is helping out the schools. Your PTOs, if you're not involved with them, they're doing amazing work to supplement what's happening with the teachers and the principals. By raising money, by being present for volunteerism, the PTOs are an unsung hero of the city works. And I'm also a former board member of my local community council. Before all this, I was a musician in Los Angeles. What brought me to Boston first was Berklee College of Music. So I went there in the 90s, became a musician, moved out to LA, had many jobs out there. I worked several seasons for American Idol. I worked on several movies. And I also became a musicians union rep. That was probably my favorite job of all time, because I got to help people who needed a voice. The musicians that I were helping were, going up against major production companies, and they needed someone to go to bat for them, and I loved it. I got to use creative problem solving. I got to come home at the end of the day knowing that I made someone's life a little better. So that ties into what's happening now. We moved to Boston, actually Quincy, after that, and then I got my job at MIT, and then after several years, we started our family, put our roots down here, made Quincy the hometown of my daughters, and I decided I had that feeling again. I wanted to give back the way I did when I was a musicians union rep. So that's part of what made me want to run for office. I want that same feeling of helping people who need a voice. And I think a lot of the citizens in Ward 1 and Quincy in general are often voiceless in what's happening on the local level. So that's who. So we've covered a little bit of the why I'm doing this, but there's also other reasons. I believe that sometimes without some new voices in city government, we can get like a clique atmosphere. The same ideas get recircled, and we wind up doing same things over and over and expecting different results. I believe we need fresh ideas at the local government level. I think we need them in city council, and I definitely think we need them in school committee, and I think we just need them in general. So I also wanted to get involved to provide a new perspective from an outside person who didn't come up in the clique atmosphere of local city Quincy politics. So what do I want to do? I want to focus on basics. I feel like we've gotten away from the basics of local government. I want to focus on sidewalks and potholes. I want to focus on seawalls. I want to focus on storm drains. I don't think it's great what's happening with the EPA in Quincy. I know there's two sides to that story, but I don't believe it's a good sign that this administration is suing us for having waste go into our waters, because we have 27 miles of coastline. It's the crown jewel of the city. I want to protect that. I also want to protect the basements of Ward 1 residents, because when you walk around Ward 1, you hear about tide gates that aren't getting repaired, and you hear about when there's a astronomical tide and a nor'easter, you now have people who are still not back in their homes over a year later from a storm last year. These are the kinds of things that I care about. I want to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. I want to make sure that the citizens of Ward 1 can see their tax dollars go to protecting them from those types of occurrences. I also want to improve dialogue between the Ward 1 councilor and the people he or she represents. I don't think we're having enough community meetings. I think the community meetings we are having are being thrown by the citizens inviting the counselor out, rather than the counselor coming out and saying, hey, what do you guys want to talk about? To that end, I'm going to pledge to have weekly office hours around Ward 1 where people can come and find me. For instance, I might be at the C Street Dunkin's between 4 and 6 on a Thursday. I'll sit there with my laptop and I'll wait to see if anyone wants the ear of the counselor. You can come in and talk to me, and you don't have to worry about putting a message on Facebook and facing backlash from your neighbors. You can come and have a private discussion. You can reach me by email. You can call me. You can write me a letter. However it is, you're going to get a response if I'm your city councilor. Even if the response is not popular. That's another thing that I think we need to address. If the response is not popular, sometimes I feel what happens here is you just don't hear anything. I pledge that even if I don't have good news for you, you're going to hear something. I'm calling for an outside review of the city's finances. I want to hire a third-party independent expert to review our spending plan, our borrowing plan, our financial forecast. What I don't want is to leave our children with a financial mess and debt service that we can't afford. I'm also interested in starting a green zoning task force. The purpose of this task force would be to put experienced builders and green technology experts together to write our zoning laws in a forward-thinking direction. I don't like to see new projects built up around here without any renewable energies concerns in there. I like to see skylights. I like to see solar panels. I want to see us thinking down the road. And the other thing that I'm excited to introduce to Quincy is the idea of participatory budgeting. What this would be a discretionary fund set aside from the city coffers that the city citizens would propose projects. We would then vote on those projects and directly fund projects that are proposed by the citizens, whether they're planting trees in the parks, whether it's city concerts and block parties, whatever it is that the citizens want that will make their life a little better, they will have a direct say with a participatory budgeting plan. This allows for us to have a little bit of democracy, because sometimes I feel like the citizens have decisions inflicted upon them instead of discussed with them. As Danielle was talking about, we need to talk about smart, forward-thinking development. It's my opinion that we need to keep the developments, the luxury condos and everything to a minimum, and the ones that we do allow need to be near public transportation. We cannot bring and attract too many more cars to this city. We're already at capacity. The streets, we're widening them before we're even paving them. So my idea is to put these complexes closer to public transportation, and I want to attract people who are willing to bike, Uber, use ride sharing, rather than increase the amount of parking in every development we put forward. These are just some of the ideas that I'm thinking about. I go into more detail on my website, which is at www.votejoemurphy.com, and I hope you'll check those out. And so I did the who, I did the what, and the why. So the when and where is Tuesday at your polling place. I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you very much.
All right, Joe, couple of questions here. Similar to what I asked Danielle, a vote that Councilor McCarthy made that you disagreed with, and or, in general, how would your approach to serving as Ward 1 City Council member differ, if at all, from Councilor McCarthy?
I think what I touched on is my communication style would be different. I think the social media presence of the councilor could be improved. We're accustomed in Ward 1 to having Councilor LaForest's style as little as 3 years ago. I thought she did a much better job of keeping people informed ahead of time, so I want to go back to that. Rather than tell people at the end when the decisions are already made, I want to get ahead of those things and involve people sooner. I want to have more community meetings earlier on in the process. I also believe that we can't shy away from some of the unpopular topics. So if you want to talk about specifics that I disagree with, in the Howes Neck area, we have a very touchy subject, which was the Louis parking lot. When it came to a vote at the city council, Councilor McCarthy didn't even second it. He just let it die. I believed after all the back and forth with the citizens, we at least deserved a vote, and we didn't get one. It just died on the vine right there in the city council. A lot of people had opinions strong for and against, but I felt like the politically expedient tact was to do nothing, and that's kind of what happened there. I would have at least had a vote and up and down, yes or no. I thought the way we did it wasn't genuine. And the other thing is, just be upfront about it. I don't agree with fighting the Long Island Bridge. I think we're spending a lot of taxpayer dollars to help a very small community, a small portion of the city. That vote did nothing to help Ward 1, and if I were in his seat, I would not have voted to support that.
Thanks, Joe. Another question. I'm sure you hear it all the time on the campaign trail. The rising rents in the city. Any plan to target and try to keep the rents to a level where people who have lived in Quincy for quite some time can still stay here?
The rents are going up, obviously, because right now the market's hot. People are charging what they can get. To bring rent prices down, we need to add supply. And as I said earlier, I believe we can add supply. We need to add more apartments, but those apartments have to be near places where people can get around without adding to the car population of Quincy. As far as keeping people in Quincy, that's near and dear to my heart. I want there to be tax abatement programs expanded for our seniors, our veterans, and our disabled citizens. I don't want people to have to leave because their property taxes have gone up. I think in the last 5 years, the average property tax bill has gone up by over $1,100, and that, for people on a fixed income, that's serious. That's serious money, and so I believe we can find abatements for the people in Quincy who are most exposed to that kind of pressure. And I believe we can add to the housing supply with smartly placed apartments near public transportation.
Okay, last question. Do you believe the city is preparing itself well for environmental concerns such as rising sea levels, coastal erosion, which we experience here? If not, what would you seek to do differently in Quincy?
I don't think the city is tackling the environment problem well at all. I think we're a little too conservative. We are usually, slow followers to environmental policy changes. Our recycling rate is one of the worst in the area. As far as the getting away from the seawalls and the tide gates I talked about earlier, just in general, I think the city can do a better job of setting an example for moving in the right direction with the environment. For instance, we don't have electrical vehicles in our fleet. Braintree is moving towards almost all electric vehicles in their fleet, and they're saving tons of money on their bottom line by doing so. When the city starts embracing that technology, you'll find that the citizens will follow, because they'll start to see that this is not an exotic new technology. This is here now. This is something we can do to help. We can also go to municipal green aggregation, and this is something we push very hard in QCAN. Going to the municipal green aggregation, even with a 5% increase in renewable energy by that switch, can save more energy than the whole solar program we did a few years ago. So these are new innovative ideas that we don't have to be so scared of. We're very cautious, and we tiptoe around it. We're not cautious about luxurious green spaces and projects around the city, but we tend to be cautious around environmental projects. If I were on the city council, I would push for a more aggressive environmental change policy. I would also more aggressively embrace the new innovations that are available to us. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you, Joe. All right, and our last speaker tonight is our current city councilor, Dave McCarthy.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank Mark Sauter and the association for having this again this year. They have a great association here in Marymount, probably one of the strongest in the city, and it's great that they step up and do this. Also, I'd like to also thank Joe Murphy and Danielle Kemp for all their hard work that they've been doing this summer. As both indicated, it takes a lot to go out when you have a family and to tackle the issues. And I commend anybody who gets involved in the business here of elected officials. As Mark said, my name is Dave McCarthy. I grew up in Howes Neck. I'll give you a quick Reader's Digest to try to stay under the 15 minutes. At 29 C Ave, down on the hill up above the Yacht Club. It was a great place to grow up. I was down there with my mother and father, Frank and Marie McCarthy. My mother is the Howes Necker, and my father was the Weymouth guy who didn't know what he was getting into, but he enjoyed himself down the neck for many years. At one point, when we were down the neck, it was a place you didn't have to leave. We had everything under the sun down there, just like Adams Shore and Marymount and probably Squantum and all the boroughs here in Quincy. But Howes Neck was special. It was a good place to stay and be down there hanging out all year round. When we left the Neck and moved up to Adams Street, when I was a senior at BC High, we kind of reflected back a little bit on our times down there and what a close, tight Ward 1 community is down here, how tight it is, all the people working together. You got to taste a little bit of the rest of the city, but you knew how tight it was. From down in Howes Neck, from there, and I went to BC High. I ended up over at UMass Boston. I came out of UMass Boston, and I met my wife, Roseanne, who's from Quincy Point, and we live now at 48 Whitney Road, and I'm the proud father of 8 children that are doing quite well, ages 28 down to 13. As we moved into the city and the kids started to grow and get more involved, I made the decision to run for school committee back in 2003. It was a great move, and I stayed on the school committee for 12 years. And also, as I was on the school committee, I tried to get involved as much as I could in the community and community events, coaching, different committees, and tried to have your hand in everything. The school committee really got me ready to take a run at the council. My first attempt at councilor at large, I didn't make out so well a few years ago, but I knew I was going to stay in the game and keep my edge and try to participate as much as I could. And I ran for Ward 1 2 years ago, and we had a great win. It's been a good experience for me. I've really seen the workings of all the departments in Quincy, all the boards, the zoning, the planning, the licensing board, the Conservation Commission. It makes you really understand how the city functions. I was there for 12 years, and I don't regret any one day that I didn't do the school committee, and it's a tough job when you do have 8 children and you're trying to balance everything. From there, we went into Ward 1, and we went into Ward 1 probably at a tough time when we had the horrific storms at the beginning of my term. It was a tough time. And I looked at a lot of things that we got done in that year and a half that, I probably dealt with the seawalls and the folks that are out of their homes and the folks that are back in their homes. Tried to help a lot of people in the Post Island area raise their homes and get back on their feet. So it was an awakening for me on my first 2 years as Ward 1 councilor. What I'd like to do is just, and I have my handouts at the table, just talk about some of my priorities in the ward, just to touch base so I cover everything. And they're not in any specific order, but I think the first one I have on here is the opioid crisis. I don't know if anybody mentioned it tonight, and I know everybody is concerned with the opioid crisis. I know it's gone down a little bit. I know that there have been great programs that we've put into the school system, and we're reaching all the way down to the elementary grades to improve the DARE program and make them more aware. But it's also throughout the city. And it's not just Quincy, it's not just Massachusetts, it's everywhere. So, that remains really close to me. I have a close friend who lost a son to addiction, a gentleman named Peter Thompson, who's a big contributor to the city in regards to prevention programs on addiction, and I want to make sure that stays on the radar. Once in a while, you won't hear anything, and all of a sudden it's forgotten real quick, but I think it's always got to be there. One of the other things I know that Joe mentioned was seawalls briefly. That was a big thing that's coming up. In the fall, we're going to have a big vote to appropriate a large amount of money to do the seawall project. That'll go from Chickatawbit Beach all the way down to the Willows down in Howes Neck. And it's going to be a great improvement. One of the items that really sticks out in our minds as we went along is that Mother Nature's going to come and go and damage the shoreline. She's probably not going to care if we go up 2 feet or 4 feet or 1.5 feet on our seawalls. But the drainage component that's coming into the seawalls, the pump house that'll be involved at Post Island will all be appropriated to help that entire stretch down there. And then we also have a second phase that'll start from the Willows down to Bayswater, which is Perry Beach down in Howes Neck, to do the rest of the seawalls over the next couple of years. That is a number one priority. I think that still takes precedent over anything else down here to get that right in regards to public safety. In regards to public safety, one of the big things that we're trying to do right now is that intersection up at Quincy Shore Drive and C Street. The concerns on C Street, the speeding, the width of C Street that we think over the next couple of years, we think we can confine it a little bit as we're going to do a program that'll run from the Fox and Hounds all the way down to Palmer Street in regards to fixing the street, repaving, putting in bike lanes, and slowing it down a little bit. If anybody pays attention to the width of the street down by the C Street Dunkin' Donuts, you could probably put 8 cars across the street on that strip that runs up to Palmer Street. It's very wide. And the program that Mr. Cassani and the mayor are getting behind should do should do some great things to C Street and be a big improvement. One of the things that also leads me here too is that I know we talk about the T, we talk about Boston's problems and the state's problems, but I like to gear in on where we are in Marymount. And one of the things I talked about and have worked with Mr. Cassani is the cut-through traffic here in Marymount. And we did a study for the last 6 months talking about Shore Ave, Squano, all the cuts through, Norton Road, all the ways that people come off the beach. In the next few weeks, we're going to be sending out the letter to everyone in Marymount to have a big meeting at the school or up at City Hall to discuss that intersection's improvements and some of the thoughts we have down here to try to curb the cut-throughs that come through Marymount. It was a big problem. It still is a big problem. We try to put law enforcement out here when we can, but sometimes it just happens because it comes off the beach and it's very strong, and it can't really put no do not enter signs or restrictions on every street, or you wouldn't be able to get home. So we really got to think about that. We talked about overdevelopment. One of the things that I put in my package and talk about is that I'm not against development as long as it's in the right place. The developers do take whatever they can get in regards to what area. If they can lean in to your neighborhood, they'll lean into your neighborhood. And I did a comprehensive study on my own, Award 1, with the Inspectional Services, Jay Duca, and City Solicitor Jim Timmons in regards to Ward 1. And we looked at the whole ward. And I've got an ordinance that's sitting right now in the Ordinance Committee about rezoning a portion of Howe's Neck from the Willows, which is at Manett and Babcock, all the way into the Yacht Club area. And what that does is it's a business B zone. And if anybody changes their business to a residence, they're going to have to revert back to Res A. And that Res A is single family. But it protects the current owners of the business through the zoning laws in Section 6 of Chapter 40A and Section 6, which allows them to still do some development, but doesn't get monstrous or overwhelming down there. I plan to look at Adams Shore area, which is Business A. I plan on looking at Business A up by Ginger Betty's area, all the way down in the ward. Any of those areas where anybody can switch gears and put up a 4-story or a 3-story condo. And I think we got to have a little better restrictions on that. And I do agree, and I know that President Kroll was here, the council earlier. I do agree on a comprehensive analysis of the whole city. Some of the zoning places we have been like that forever, and they need to be looked at. And maybe they shouldn't be Business C or Residence B. And there's 2 particular locations other than Howe's Neck and other than the ones I mentioned down in Quincy Point and right up here on Marymount Road that I want to look at too. Because the developers, once they see what the zoning is, they're going to jump on it. One of the big things I tried to focus to in the last year and a half was services down here. We have great services in the city of Quincy. I don't think we realize it sometimes. The trash pickup, the recycling, the park and rec services, the programs we have in the schools, the school budget itself, and all the programs that come with the school, after school, the grants we have. So that's something that Quincy, I think, really does well. If you check with a lot of communities, I don't think they have that lineup like we have in Quincy. Dave Murphy, I can't say enough for him with the parks. If you go and look at any park, and I'll speak for Ward 1, LeBrec, Brill Field, the playgrounds that are brand new, Edgewater Drive, the grass section there, which always has been a nuisance over the years. He's done a tremendous job as the Commissioner of Natural Resources for the Park and Rec Department. Also, bringing Dave Murphy back brings a component that I think was brought up about environmental. He's very, very in tune with the conservation end of things and very in tune in what we're doing at some of the salt marshes down on Post Island, down across from C Street, where the boardwalk is, in regards to restoring them properly with the tie gates, including the Spring Street tie gates and the tie gates that we have in other locations to make sure it flows right. So he's also, it's a new phase having him involved in meetings with us, where it's usually the DPW and some engineers along with some outside experts, but now Dave Murphy is going to have a great role with that. There's a lot of good things that are going on in Quincy. Folks really have to take a hard look at that. A city our size and the popularity of Quincy now. You put your house on the market, it's gone in 2 days. People want to come to Quincy. They come to Quincy because the budget is stable. The school system is very good. We added another $5 million to the budget in the school system. Rick DeCristofaro and Kathy Hubley and the school committee, they do a great job taking that money and putting it in the right places. The city of my eyes has really been blossoming over the last 5 or 6 years. The downtown's turning the corner. In regards to, we talked a little bit about rent and costs. That downtown supply is going to increase, and it's going to be done right. And folks want it all done yesterday. Well, it takes some time, and I think it's all going to work out very well. I've enjoyed the last year and a half. I have a really, really respect for the office. I try to do my homework, and I get back to everybody as quick as I can with any answer I can get. As a lot of the other candidates said, good or bad, I try to cover it. And I hope that folks come out on September 10th, and I humbly ask for your vote again to do 2 more years as the Ward 1 councilor. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. Time for a quick question, or 2 questions here. I'll just throw them both to you. If reelected, a few goals for the next 2 years. Where do you think you could achieve more? And also give you an opportunity, I think, to respond to a few of your challengers here tonight who I think raised the issue that they think the communication from you and your position could be better. We'll finish with those 2 questions.
Okay. The goals, really, when it comes to Ward 1, and we're here in Marymount tonight, is to try to tackle that traffic question coming through. I think Marymount, the neighborhood, is beautiful. It's in great shape. I know that next year there's more streets, Assabet, Pontiac. There's going to be work done on more streets in Marymount. I wanted to make sure that, Ward 1 got a piece of its pie, because the pie goes pretty quick with all the ward councilors wanting streets and sidewalks done. But the development end of things, I think that's the big goal with me, is to rewrite that ordinance and tweak it a little bit, the one that I have set up for Howe's Neck, in regards to controlling that Business B, Business A, Business C, which is really 3 stories, 4 stories, and 6 stories in certain areas that surround the ward and that are in the ward, so it reverts back to Res A, and not a Residence A that cripples somebody who's sitting in an area that is full of houses that just happen to be zoned Business B. They'll still be able to develop their house. They'll still be able to sell their house. They'll still be able to add to it. There's protection for the owners, and I think a lot of that is misconstrued out there on Facebook sometimes. And I'd like to tweak it so that we can control the developer a little bit outside of the city. When you get into the city, it's harder, and it's harder in different wards. Ward 2 and Ward 4, they're more populated with businesses. If you look at Ward 1 and you bring it in pretty much from the police station in, I know there's other parts of Ward 1 on the edge of the city out there, but if you bring it in from the police station in, it's pretty much residential A. There's a few stores down C Street, but you want to make sure the businesses stay because you want to have them here and you want to have the right businesses in, but you don't want anybody putting 4 stories up on a narrow piece of C Street, which is down in House Neck, and I want to do the same thing that's up through Marymount and Adams Shore, and try to protect us a little bit from that zoning answer you get from the lawyers and the developers who say, well, it's zoned for that, and I have the right to build. By right, I can build. Yeah, but I want to make sure it's not monstrous. It can be nice and it can fit in. So that, I think, is the big goal. What was the second question, Mark, again?
Communication.
Oh, Facebook. Love that. No, the Facebook is probably the one way where I communicate with most folks. I put my ad in, elect Dave McCarthy, at .org. But Facebook's usually the way that I get on and get things out. It's hard when you have a full-time job. I work for General Dynamics, and I'm the director of security. I've been there for 36 years to come up with a newsletter. I totally think it's a great idea, but we'll have to see if I can turn it around and be better on the communication. I think I talk to everybody pretty promptly. My phone number that goes to my cell in the city, I have go straight to my personal cell. So when you call the 376-1351 number, it ends up coming right to my own cell number, which is 508-259-6650. And I usually get everybody. So I think I've been pretty good at that. But we can always improve.
All right. Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. Thank you, everyone, for coming down tonight. I encourage the candidates to stick around for a couple minutes. You can ask any more questions directly to them. Shack will be open for maybe 10 more minutes, so grab something there if you would like. And stay tuned. We'll try to do another of these candidate nights in the next couple of weeks with the rest of the candidates. And please get out to vote on Tuesday. Thank you all.